see, the beauty about real estate is you learn to use debt to get rich. If you're going to be rich, you have to learn to use debt. It's called other people's money. The 6 words that are basics of financial education, financial intelligence: income, expense, asset, liability. And the 2 other words are cash flow. So when you look at the average person, they have a job, money comes in here, they pay for their house, and the money goes to a bank through a mortgage. So it's not an asset because the cash is flowing out. So it's a liability. So the definition of liability, does it take money from your pocket? And for an asset, does it put money in your pocket? So when I have a rental property here, it puts money in my pocket. So if I live in the house, it's a liability, because even if I have no debt on it, I still have taxes, depreciation, repairs, and upkeep, insurance, and all this. When I rent a property, I've done a good job buying it and structuring it. Every month it sends me money. So I started off when I was 25. I had a little 1-bedroom condo, and it put 25 bucks in my pocket. It was a start. So this was good debt. You see, the debt also went out and paid, but it also put $25 in my pocket. So net, I was making money from my little house. So today, my wife and I own 6,500 of them. And every month, 6,500 houses put money in my pocket. My people who live in them love me and all this because they have a place to live. But all of this comes from debt. So we have the 100% finance here. It's all debt. So this is good debt. And what makes it good debt are the 2 most important words: cash flow.
NOI means net operating income. So if you really think about it, it's just income minus expenses. That's all it is. And so it's important to know where you are financially. So a banker is going to look at your income after expenses. So that's a great way to say it.
Yeah, it's really quite simple. So let's say, keep the numbers simple. You have $1,000 income, and you have $500 in expenses. This is a property.
Yep. So you have a $500 NOI, or net operating income.
So why is that important?
Well, the banker looks at that number because that's the number that they see to be able to pay back any debt you might want.
Right, this is where this comes in, right?
Correct. So they're going to look here and they're going to say, okay, this person has $500 in NOI, therefore we can give them a loan, say up to, say, $350, $250 or something like that. So they're not going to give you a loan for the whole amount because they don't want you to be that tight. So but what they're going to do is they're going to look at the NOI and say, how much can we loan you?
So when Kenny calls me and says, I have this property, it's in horrible condition, there's no income, there's expenses all over the place, you get excited, right?
A lot of people get hung up here because they don't have a financial statement, any way to go to a banker, let's say. But sometimes a banker will look at the property itself. So they'll say, this has a bad NOI on it, why would we give you money? You know what I mean? And then so that's when the financial education comes in and you say, well, this is what I plan to do with it.
Correct. What Kenny is saying, I'm keeping the numbers simple. He's had income of 0.
Yeah.
And this is 1,000.
Yeah. So you'd have a negative NOI.
And the banker goes, tell me why.
I can't lend on that, right?
Right.
Because it's a higher risk of being able to be paid back. the NOI, or the net operating income, determines the value. So what you back into it, another vehicle called the capitalization rate, or a cap rate. So it's actually, well, we're getting a little technical, but typically the cap rate or capitalization rate divided into the NOI determines the price. So that's generally how that works. But in the case that we were talking about, the value of the building with no tenant in it
It's way low.
is way low, and there's really no income. So it's basically whatever the structure is. So I've seen lots of situations where a vacant building, somebody might have spent $5–10 million on a building that's completely vacant. Vacant warehouses, vacant whatevers, right? Sometimes you see them get converted into clubs or whatever. Well, there's value there. Somebody spent a lot of money on it. Well, one time, somebody owns it too. It could be a bank, it could be whatever. So taking that and creating value, sticking a restaurant in it, a gym in it, a club in it, it doesn't really matter who's in it. Well, it does, because you want them to pay you, but now you're creating the income, and then that's how you create value. So in that example, let's say you buy a building for $1 million, on a block. With a tenant in it, it could be worth $3, $4, $5 million.
So if it's a tenant in it, the value is up.
Yeah, right. Because what you do is you put all that together, and then you can actually sell it.
Got it. And so even if the NOI is negative, if you create a plan that creates value for the property and shows the increase that you're going to give the property's value, the bank will give you the loan.
Oftentimes, yeah, and
Not always.
Not always, but there are ways to do it. So in that particular case, you might get a loan from somebody like Robert and say, hey, I need $1 million, and this is my plan. And then once you get a tenant in it, then you go back to the bank and you say, hey, give me a loan, and then they give you a loan and you pay Robert back.
So the thing that Kenny is always looking for is, after we stabilize the building, he'll tell me, he says, look, in 5 years, I'm going to get this from 1,000 to 10,000.
Yeah.
I go, okay, so that I know I'm in it for 5 years with them as an investor. And on top of that, we're going to reduce the expenses back to 500. The NOI goes up, the value goes up, the debt goes up to, let's say, 10,000.
So I have a friend, for example, he actually bought a building in a town up in Idaho where I have a vacation house for about $1 million. And it was an old Elks building, a beautiful building downtown, but it had been vacant for a long time. He bought it, and he put like 30 offices in there, small offices, 1,500 to 2,000 feet each, and grew the revenue, right? So everybody pays.
So the income went up.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he broke it up and then leased it up, and so he has his expenses, but now he's got 30 people paying rent, as opposed to just one big vacant building. He turned it into a pretty cool workspace, for everybody.
But and then Kenny's, in his third book, The Advanced Guide to Real Estate, his job is to get this up, keep this stable. Then he goes back to the banker and says, look, we've got all these tenant monies going up, and so we now want $12,000.
Yeah.
Because he's improved income, kept expenses low, building's more valuable.
Yeah, the key there is the bank's always looking at your NOI to pay back their loan. So the more you can grow that, the more loan you can get.
Mm-hmm. And so essentially the renters are paying your debt.
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah, essentially. So if that building I was referring to goes to 50% vacant, now he's in trouble.